Welcome back. Today on Cooking with Tammy, I'm going to show you how to make a delicious beef tip and gravy recipe. We're going to be taking tender chunks of beef and cooking it down in a delicious rich brown gravy. When I tell you this meal right here, it's going to be so good. It's going to be melt in your mouth, delicious. So without further ado, let's introduce these ingredients and get to cooking. For this recipe, I'm going to be using chuck roast. However, you can feel free to substitute with using sirloin steak or even beef tenderloin. It's totally up to you and your preference. When it comes down to our other ingredients, I'm going to be using onions along with condensed French onion soup, beef broth, Worcestershire sauce, red wine. If you're not into red wine, you don't have to use it. You can definitely substitute with adding a little bit more broth. And we're also going to need rosemary along with fresh thyme, bay leaves, finely chopped garlic. And I'm also going to be incorporating some jalapeños with this recipe. And no, this recipe, I can guarantee you, it's not going to be spicy. But Tammy, you're using jalapeños anyway. No worries. I'm going to show you a trick to get the delicious flavors from the jalapeños minus the spiciness. For our dried ingredients, we're going to need garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, paprika, salt, ground black pepper, fresh thyme, along with oil. And that's about it, guys. Let's get to cooking and let's get this pot rocking. First thing I'm going to do with our meat is we're going to cube it on up. Of course, if you don't want to cube this meat on up, you can definitely purchase it already cubed. However, every store is a little different. Even though it's cubed, it's not to your liking as far as the size is concerned. So yeah, even though the meat was already cubed at my local grocery store, it wasn't the size that I was looking for. It was like cubed really, really small. Once we're done, we're going to introduce some oil to the meat. And it's time to season this meat on up. So we're going to hit it off with a good amount of salt. I mean, after all, it is 2 pounds of meat. Once we're done, we're going to go in and we're going to add some black pepper. When it comes to the ground black pepper, add as much as you want to add, but don't add too much, all right? I'm not going to say the same thing for the salt because we all need to watch our salt intake, all right? And not to mention, the other ingredients that we're going to be using does contain salt as well. So when it comes to the salt, we're going to scale back just a bit, but we are going to add a good amount of ground black pepper. Once we're done, we're going to add some garlic powder, along with onion powder. We're also going to add some chili powder. I'm just going to add a small amount of chili powder simply because I don't want this recipe to be too spicy. And we're also going to add some paprika. I'm adding the paprika simply for color. Once we're done, we're going to mix and combine all of these dry seasonings with the meat. We're going to mix it in really, really good, guys. We want to make sure the seasoning is perfectly distributed throughout the meat. In the meanwhile, using a heavy-duty pot, we want to make sure that our pot is getting nice and hot because we're going to be browning this meat. We're not going to be searing it, but we're going to be browning it. And it's really important for our pan or pot or heavy-duty skillet to be nice and hot. For this particular recipe, I love to use my cast iron Dutch oven skillet. When I tell you this thing right here, it gets so hot, oh my goodness. We're going to add a small drizzle of oil to the pan. As you can see, it is smoking hot. This is definitely what we need. I'm going to go ahead and add all of our meat to the pan. The pan is so hot that this meat is going to brown up in a matter of minutes. Keep in mind also that we did use chili powder. And I'll tell you a key tip. Just like garlic, chili powder tends to burn really fast. So don't be alarmed if your smoke alarm goes off. But nevertheless, we're going to be rocking out the flavors, all right? Just fan that smoke alarm on off and continue cooking. It may seem like I'm adding a lot of beef to the pan, but it's totally okay because we're not really searing the beef. We're only browning the beef. Now, if we were to sear the beef, of course, we would need ample space and room. Once the beef starts to brown on up, we're going to get in there. We're going to flip it on over, allow it to brown on the other side as well. As you can see, we have a nice caramelization of color going on. This is perfect. We're going to add all of our beef bites to the bowl. And once we're done, we're going to set it aside. Of course, the beef is not going to be cooked all the way through because all we did was brown the meat. But nevertheless, we're going to be braising this meat later. And at that point in time, trust me, it's going to be cooked all the way through. Now that we've gotten all of our meat out of the pan, I'm going to allow the temperature of the oil to come back up to temperature. Simply because we're going to be adding our onions to the pan. And I want to cook these onions on down until they become nice and translucent. Stir it on up in all of that delicious goodness that's sitting in the bottom of the pan. I know we've only went ahead and browned the beef, but if you smell the aroma right now, oh my goodness, it smells so delightful and delicious in this house right now. It smells so good. We're just going to cook our onions down, like I said before, until they become nice and translucent. Our pan is already hot and smoking, so this part right here should take about maybe 30 seconds to a minute. Once we're done, we're going to add our finely chopped garlic. We're going to stir that on in as well. Be sure to move the garlic around, simply because garlic, like I said, like chili powder, tends to burn really quickly. So we're just going to keep the garlic moving. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all of the aromatics to be released from the garlic. Trust me, you're going to know when the garlic is fragrant. You're going to smell it in the atmosphere. Once the garlic is nice and fragrant, we're going to add our beef back to the pan, along with all of the delicious juices that you see in the bowl. And we're going to combine everything together. Let's pick up and introduce some new flavors. Once we're done, we're going to introduce our beef broth. Here's the thing, if you don't have beef broth in your pantry, no worries whatsoever. All you need is some beef bouillon, add some water, and boom, you have beef broth. Not to mention, it tastes better anyway. We're also going to add our French onion condensed soup mix, along with our red wine. When it comes down to the French onion condensed soup mix, you can definitely find it in the soup aisle. If you don't do red wine or you don't drink red wine, no worries whatsoever. Just leave it out. We're also going to add some Worcestershire sauce to the mix as well, along with our fresh thyme, our bay leaves, and rosemary. And of course, we can't leave out our jalapeños. We're going to go ahead and slice up some jalapeños. And the key tip and trick to removing the heat from the jalapeno is simply by removing the white portion of the jalapeno once you cut it down, which in this situation is the membrane and the seeds. Once you remove the membrane, which is that white part, and the seeds, trust me, it's not going to be spicy. You're just going to get a nice element of flavor to this beef tip and gravy recipe, minus the spice factor. Once we're done, we're going to stir everything on up. Make sure everything is well combined. Once we're done, we're going to cover it back down with the lid, and we're going to place it into our 400 Fahrenheit degree oven. And we're going to cook our meat on down until it's nice and tender. Place it into the oven, guys. If you cook it on the stovetop, it's going to take all day, and you're going to find yourself having to add a lot of liquid to the pot. So not worth it. Just place it in the oven. As they say, set it and forget it. Well, in this case, don't forget it, but you're going to place it into the oven. Check on it periodically. After 1 hour, your meat should be fork tender and looking just like this. So you're going to have a nice, delicious, thick gravy. Not to mention, the sauce is going to reduce perfectly. And this is it, guys. If your gravy is a little bit on the liquefied side, but your beef is extremely tender, what you're going to do is you're going to get some cornstarch and water. You're going to combine it together and add it to your gravy. Stir it on up really, really good. At that point in time, you don't have to put it back into the oven. However, you can put it on top of the stovetop. However, if your pot or your skillet is as hot as mine, it's no need to even turn the stovetop back on or place it into the oven. We're just going to combine it, stir it on up really, really good. Make sure everything is perfectly combined, and your sauce is going to thicken up literally before your eyes. And this is it, guys, our beef tip and gravy recipe. When I tell you, this recipe right here is definitely 5 stars, it's definitely 5 stars. The flavors are amazing. It's all about using the perfect and complementary seasonings. That's all you need. Once you match those seasonings perfectly, boom, you have a delicious recipe. We're going to go ahead and take our delicious beef tip and gravy, and we're going to place it on top of some rice. When I tell you, this right here was everything. Oh my goodness, my entire family devoured this meal in a matter of seconds, to the point where I made it 3 days in a row. That's how delicious it was. If you want to know how to make the perfect rice, I definitely leave the link in the description bar on how to make rice. Also, if you don't want to serve this recipe up with white rice, you could definitely serve it on up with yellow rice or even mashed potatoes. Either way, it goes really well. How do I know? Because like I said, I made this recipe 3 days in a row. White rice, yellow rice, and mashed potatoes. Anyway, guys, I'm your girl Cooking with Tammy. Don't forget to check me out on cookingwithtammy.shop to purchase your seasonings. And as always, I will definitely catch you guys in another video. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.